Hey everyone, welcome to this reading of the current energies leading up to the full moon in Virgo coming later this week, Thursday to be more precise. But this energy sort of recaps what's led up to this for the last couple of weeks and where we'll be headed beyond that. I think that my next reading will be for Aries season, which begins next week too. But for the time being, we're going to focus on this full moon in Virgo energy, which is very intense in Pisces season for a multitude of reasons. First of all, this weekend in particular, we have had the Sun squaring Neptune, which has been intense, and I can only express it as being an Eight of Swords type energy, an energy that forces us into the deep recesses of our subconscious mind, into our insecurities, into self-evaluation with transparency and honesty and authenticity, which can be painful as we all are accustomed to living in a fabricated reality, which is also the shadow side of Neptune. And Lord knows we're all deeply entrenched in that horse shit through our culture, our politics, pretty much any aspect of organized thought in the human realm of these times. So while I do expect I will discuss more about this astrological energy, I think the cards will give us a very strong idea of the emotionality involved here. And I want to preface that, I haven't recorded anything for a few weeks now. A lot took place in my life in that time. Venus and Mars, in their convergence, did a real number on my masculine divinity when Mars was sort of pushing through about 10 days ago. And I, as you know, you've probably heard me discuss this if you've been following this channel for a while. I've had a lot of difficulty finding sovereignty in my professional environment, and finding myself in a illusory trap, and also finding myself in a lot of darkness, finding my light worker skills put to the extreme of exhaustion, saturation, bypassing, and generally feeling very disconnected from the things that are, part of my integrity. So I took it upon myself to remove myself from that dynamic, and I did it without conflict. The conflictual energy that was coming towards me, I decided just to circumvent, move beyond, not give importance to, and instead just reclaim my own personal independence and sovereignty. So as we are all mirrors to one another, I imagine in some shape or form you found yourself on your own individuation path, perhaps more internally than externally. It may have been a question of finding a need for quietude within, a need for reconnection to the essence of who you are that had perhaps been tested or corrupted in some shape or form. It seems to me that the last couple of weeks have been about reconnecting to source, reconnecting to what drives us, reconnecting to the beauty of life, and subsequently having to face where we have given our power away to things that don't support that beauty and that integrity and that path to joy and serenity and expansion. So, having said all of that, this Pisces season in general has been less murky than Pisces season can often be, however, filled with all sorts of emotional twists and turns. It's been a bit of an energetic roller coaster ride, and you probably have been feeling pretty ungrounded in some area of your life, and if not ungrounded, then you may have found yourself being evasive, living in avoidance, finding ways to bury your head in the sand and not actually face the true need for reevaluation and reassessment in your life. And that's the problem with Pisces season. I mean, this is the last sign of the Zodiac wheel, so therefore it is an energy of completion, but it's not a tangible completion. That first decan of Pisces forces us to go within and see how the events of the last year have affected us, how we have been challenged, how we have integrated those challenges into our own dynamism, our own inner life, our own sense of purpose and meaning within, towards ourselves, how we take care of ourselves, how we understand ourselves, how we give voice to our feelings, our needs, our doubts, our insecurities. All of these things have to be the subconscious that feeds those shadow aspects of ourselves have to be fully analyzed. Of course, they're constantly being challenged throughout the year through the different energies of the Zodiac. However, in Pisces, there's a culmination. The second decan comes along, then you got to figure out how the outside world affects you. For me, it was like clockwork, but as soon as I moved into that second decan energy, I couldn't take the pressure of the outside and how it was affecting my subconscious self on a soul level, on my soul journey, and the things that were holding me back, the things that were getting in my way, the things that were forcing me into an uncomfortable level of compromise. There was a snap. The tension could not be maintained. Sometimes squares challenge us into that degree of tension to the point of something snapping. And if that happens, we have to accept it as being a part of our divine path and an opening to something new and more in alignment with our higher purpose. So, part of that for me, the roller coaster ride, was also negotiating with the sense of loss, because for me, I had invested in what I was doing professionally. I had invested in my environment. I had invested in my colleagues. I had invested in the types of relationships I had with a multitude of people on an individual and on a collective level, and my identity had become imbued with all of those people and those activities and that routine and the sense of my worth being aligned with the purposefulness of my role. And of course, part of removing yourself from something like that is also coming to an understanding of how disposable we are as humans. How when we have something to offer other people, particularly in a commercial transactional manner, we can continue to feed the notion of being valued. But as soon as we remove ourselves from that, we become mostly forgotten. This reminds me, I've mentioned this to a couple of people in my life this week, this reminds me of the play by Alan Bennett. I believe it was called A Woman of No Importance. Specifically a monologue delivered, if you can find it on YouTube if you're interested, by the great actress Patricia Rutledge, where she depicts through monologue, telephone monologue, the ruminations of a person who has completely invested their identity in a workplace dynamic, and in this case over the course of probably many years, and this person becomes ill, and in their removal from that, their incapacity to participate, first of all, they hold on, and they're looking for the validation of their colleagues to tell them what's happening. Oh, I haven't heard from this person. Oh, I didn't. Oh, this happened, so on and so forth. And then eventually, of course, it leads to the ultimate truth, which is that in her final hours, she realizes that she's devoted herself to things and people who, once she was no longer useful to them, had no place for her. It was of no importance. And this is a great moral and spiritual tale for all of us who get caught up in the prison of over-demanding professional obligations, particularly if there's a tyrant or a narcissist at the helm. We have to protect ourselves. We have to stay conscious of our process. So I put that little cautionary tale in there. The great news is that, as we become more and more spiritually awake, we move through these processes faster. And hopefully you're finding some parallel in here to something in your life. Obviously, I know that not everybody has decided to upend their career and, move on to different things. But the pull of the universe is always strong, whatever the calling is in your life. What I wanted to convey in expressing all of this is how quickly these things can be processed when we are awake. And it's not to say that I didn't, of course, in Pisces season, and just given the nature of who I am as a person, my sensitivity caused me to feel a great sense of disorientation, a great sense of loss, a great sense of a lack of direction, a great sense of confusion, emotional pain, emotional, grief, mourning. And ultimately what that came down to was more an understanding of it's always the case that it's the mourning of the illusion, because what is real you do not lose, it stays with you, right? And that's a hard one that we all go through, but mine was perfectly divinely timed in the middle of Pisces season in that second decan, so it was a lot. And then there were issues of righteousness, there were issues of entitlement, there were issues of expectation, there were issues of trying to figure out how much of it was self-created, how much of it I was actually totally in control of. And of course, the truth of the matter is that I was in control of all of it. We always are. Another Piscean revelation, that just in the wholeness of being, being neither tethered to the past nor the future, being in the present moment, your experience is still imbued with all of the emotions and the physical shifts that have taken place. But in being in the present moment, you also get a strong understanding of your own power, your own ability to choose not how something happens, but how you respond to it, right? So, again, I'm speaking in very broad terms here so that it hopefully is relatable on some level, as you are not living my life. But, and I know I've been talking now for 16 minutes about these things, but this is the basis of the energy. What we will move into next is, we are already there actually, in this final week, third decan of Pisces season, is the synthesis of the inner knowingness and the outer knowingness and the acceptance of shadow within and without. And there will be a graduation point, and the graduation point ultimately corresponds to this full moon in Virgo, because Virgo, being the opposite of Pisces, it forces us to anchor that subconscious, more fluid energy and concepts into constructs that serve us in our graduation point as we level up to start the next astrological year with Aries season, which is of course about the individuation process. Aries is when we set the tone, when we lay the foundations for the next year of our lives. Not necessarily materially, if you are not making big material changes in your life, but certainly from your inner life process and how that's going to evolve through the other subsequent 11 signs, bringing us back to Pisces season in 2023. Once we have an understanding of these constructs, once we have an understanding of the dynamism of the wheel of fortune, the wheel of life, bit by bit we become more and more empowered to use these energies to our advantage, and to step outside of duality, to step outside of duplicity. Because I think that's important to understand too, that there's duality in everything, right? There's dark and light in everything. One cannot exist without the other. But it's the duplicity that we in our human condition espouse around those concepts that can actually serve us least of all and anchor us in a karmic cycle that repeats over and over again, like Groundhog Day. And we get to choose. These shifts in the energies are portals to new choices, new foundations for new leveling up, new experiences, new lightness of being through even the darkest of experiences. So, and we don't, as human beings, we don't get to a point where we stop having those experiences. I mean, the flow of humanity in itself, biologically, is preconditioned to be one of constant challenge. Our bodies age. We live in a society that does not respect us as we grow older any longer, in any case, hasn't for some time. So these challenges are innate to our experience. How do we go about them? How do we go about them to suit ourselves best of all? Well, the answer is, of course, in the universality of love. We have to find the love within ourselves that we can offer to the outside world. And that in turn means that the chaos of those challenges and struggles is more or less neutralized in faith and love. So, I know, I'm speaking an awful lot in intangible terms today, so let's get into the cards for this week. I'll start with actually something very interesting that was at the very beginning. First card I pulled, should I say, an oracle card from what deck is this from? From the Soul's Journey. Loneliness. I know that I am never alone. And again, you'll notice that there is a wheel there, a circle. The idea of no matter what state we are in, we are connected to the center, which is essentially, in our case, Gaia, Earth, so. And the light shines out. So let's read the loneliness card so that we can meditate a little bit on the value of loneliness in Pisces season. Because in Pisces season, very often we find that even in being surrounded by other people, with our partners, our children, our friends, our colleagues, whatever it is, that we still feel a deep sense of aloneness, which in turn, when the shadow side takes hold, feels a lot like loneliness, right? So this card has come to you because you must be reminded that there is a difference between being lonely and being alone. Feelings of loneliness originate from a sense of not appreciating the most important person in your life. You. If solitude seems like an affliction, you need to work on creating a healthy relationship with yourself. Only then will you attract others who will nurture your soul. If you don't develop a healthy relationship with yourself first, you will only draw unhealthy relationships to you. And that is very Piscean, and it's a very specific moment for us to have a good understanding of that with the relationships we have. What do you receive from the relationships that you give the most to? And when you feel out of alignment with those things, which is why I left my job, you have to be honest with yourself to understand that it's because you're not honoring your relationship with yourself. And that is really what it came down to for me. As much as I could blame 1,000,001 other reasons and circumstances and characteristics in other people, and it really fundamentally came down to the fact that I wasn't able to take care of myself, that I wasn't able to take care of my needs, that I wasn't focused on my own evolutionary process. I do not wish to live a life where my soul journey gets cast aside for the sake of a paycheck, which is, there is really no amount of money that makes that worthwhile. Unfortunately, that's difficult to understand in a world that values money to the degree that we do, but it is the truth. And it's a tough one to navigate because it means that you're always going against the grain of the social fabric when you live in a despotic, capitalistic, fascistic system. To create a healthy, positive relationship with yourself, you must begin to feel worthy of love. A very, very difficult one when you're feeling self-doubt and unvalued, when you're putting all of your eggs into that basket of looking for your validation from other people, right? The pessimism of this physical dimension can affect your self-esteem if you don't have the strong conviction that you are valuable and meaningful. Don't view solitude as a weakness. It is merely your soul telling you that it is time to do some inner work and reevaluate your path before you start to shine. As you sit in the silence of your soul, you will realize that your spirit family, teachers, and guides are with you. You are never alone. And it is hard sometimes especially when you focus so much on the material realm, to remind yourself of that you are not alone. Energetically, you're constantly buoyed by your guides, your support system from the astral realm, and your ancestors, whatever it is that you tap into most energetically, you have to honor that. And you have to be willing to be honest with yourself when you've stopped honoring that. Because the connection does go silent if you don't nurture it. That's the power of prayer for those who know that value. So our process from removing the sense of loneliness and transforming that into a valuable understanding of aloneness and the deep fertility of aloneness, in the sense of what you can create, how you can meditate, how you can improve your mental and physical and spiritual and emotional health in your aloneness. Whatever it may be. I mean, if you have an instrument that you can use for that, let's say a musical instrument, for example, or a pen, or a keyboard if you type to write, or whatever it is, any form of expression, this is celebrating your aloneness, right? And we tend to always be looking somewhere else for what we're missing out on, and it usually leads to disappointment, because at the end of the day we're not honoring just how much we have those answers within. So how do we get from loneliness to loneliness? Well, we have this card for us this week too, purification. So I'm going to read that next. That is from the Sacred Power reading cards, and I would like to know how to purify myself right now. And we are in a water season, so listen closely, because there's a strong emphasis on the water element here. Pisces couldn't be more aquatic, right? Water is deeply cleansing and purifying, which is why it's used in symbolic practices throughout the world. Water is the universal life force and symbol of purity and fertility. Often seen as life itself, without water we would not be able to exist in our physical form. Water sustains all life on earth. Water cleanses, quenches thirst, and refreshes all living systems. Purification as a symbolic practice brings us closer to our divine self and celestial and heavenly beings. Sacred traditions and practices wash away impurities from the soul and pollutants from the physical body. Purity allows us to see and hear the voice of truth and keep our ego self in check. And I wanted to just interject here. One of the things that we did not touch upon thus far in talking about Pisces season, that you may have also been triggered by, is fear. Subconscious thinking is usually driven by fear in the vast majority of us. I mean, we also live in a society that is conditioned by fear. I mean, in order to belong, you have to submit to the fear. If you don't, you transcend it, but we're too terrified to do that most of the time, right? So think about that in this purification process too. Right now, your body, mind, and spirit need to be purified. Clear unwanted energy by focusing on emotional balance. Eat clean, nutritious food. Now is the time to open your heart and soul to release any old trauma, pain or emotional wounds, suffering or regret that you are carrying in the spiritual backpack. This is the resolution of Pisces season, right? It can be bigger picture traumas and fears that you've been carrying your whole life, but it could also just be the ones that you can specifically think of in the last year. Maybe it's because you start feeling yourself physically aging more, so you're more attuned to your fear of death or of illness, or certainly those things come up in me when I find myself aimless, or when I remove myself from a system. I start the outsider mentality suddenly makes me think, like, that I'm, I must have, there must be another challenge just waiting for me that's going to be dark and difficult, and so I'm probably ill, or I'm probably going, I'm going to have to face that I'm a drug addict because I can't sleep without using pot, or whatever, all these things, and they turn into fears rather than them being empowerment, like, wow, now I have the time to take care of myself, now I have the time to focus on my wellness, to wean myself off of the things that I've been dependent upon because I didn't have the time and energy to focus on my healing. This type of thing, it's like really how we talk to ourselves, right? Cleansing of your physical space is required now too. Call on your angelic or spiritual helpers to assist you energetically with this task, at home, work, or socially. Clean your home environment or workspace. Remove or donate any outdated or unwanted items, clearing old stagnant energy. Water is a conduit for clear channeling and spirit communication. You may be feeling disconnected from spirit or your higher self. Spend time around running water such as lakes, waterfalls, or streams to purify your mind. Treat yourself to spa therapies or therapeutic baths to reset your senses. Be mindful during the moments you choose to spend time in and around water. Your observations and impressions will give you great insight into your current emotions. And may I also add, the most important thing that obviously is not alluded to here because it's pretty basic, make sure you hydrate, right? Very often, when we feel out of alignment, the first thing that we should do is check that we are replenishing our fluids and electrolytes, because that does put us completely out of alignment, physically and spiritually. Affirmation: I purify my soul. I release burden and expectation of choices. I am free to make my own decisions with love and confidence. Sorry guys, this is going to be a long one because, well, at this point I'm only doing a video every couple of weeks. I'm sure you can figure out how to break it up into different segments. For example, maybe you just want to do the oracle cards first, and then we'll do the tarot on your second viewing, right? That could work. So where are we headed with this post-full moon in Virgo? We get from the Sufi Wisdom Oracle deck, finding the path. You are the driver and the navigator. So there's a lot of self-responsibilization there, right? Doing as others told me, I was blind. Coming when others called me, I was lost. Then I left everyone, including myself. Then I found everyone, including myself. Rumi. In the face of a challenging decision, you may feel paralyzed and not know what to do. It might be fear that keeps you from finding your way, or stress may block your ability to seek higher guidance. You may doubt your own ability and question the wisdom of your restless mind. Rumi comes with a message for you to guard against others trying to influence you. By staying centered in your heart, you can align with your deeper essence. This can be a magical moment to take a step toward creating the life that is right for you. The heart seeks solutions through love and opens the mystery of divine perception. You learn to trust a wisdom that is already yours. If you turn to your rational mind, you will be relying on a resource of limited vision. Dear one, your deeper instincts are often the right ones. You can rise above your doubts and uncertainty by learning to trust your heart. It is wise not to become too attached to the outcome. Make a choice and stand by it. Take a risk, sure. Taking a risk is part of life and a part of the human condition. Accept the consequences and know that you have the ability to face them. The important thing is not to betray your commitment to your own growth and sense of well-being. Right? It's certainly how I live my life, and everybody thinks I'm a lunatic as a result. Mantra. I am honoring and affirming my life by making a serious commitment to be the best person I can be. I will trust my heart to guide me in making my decisions. Which is interesting, because our underlying energy of the week, and we are moving on to the tarot now, if you wish to pause. The Three of Wands. So, what is the Three of Wands? Three of Wands is expectation. Three of Wands is when we have the sense that we've put in the work and we're waiting to reap what we've sown. And in that period of waiting, there is a danger. There's a danger of losing yourself because you're not in the present moment. You're not actually continuing to build. The old expression, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. A lot can, pass you by if you're too busy looking at where you feel you need to be next, which is what our expectations are built upon. And certainly when it comes to expectations of other people, we all know that leads to disappointment, because we can only be in our own heads and in our own bodies, and we cannot know what the other person is thinking or wanting. So we have to make sure that we're always in alignment with what we want and what we need to manifest. That way we can accept whatever comes our way in our own self-accountability, right? So while I do get a strong sense that this is a period of a pause of sorts, that we are entitled to this pause, because when we're resolving our Piscean season, before we move into that Aries individuation, we want to have a hanged man moment where we take the time to observe what we're experiencing. Sorry, I hadn't taken any clarifiers specifically because they didn't want to come out when I was pulling in advance, so I decided I'd do it on camera. So I wanted to get a clarifier on the Three of Wands, because it is a broad card, expectation. Of course, it's going to depend on what's going on in your life personally. But we got the Nine of Pentacles. The Nine of Pentacles is specifically relating here to how good we feel about ourselves. If our expectations are placed outside of ourselves, that's an indication that we're not actually satisfied with the work that we're doing on ourselves, that we're not actually feeling a sense of resolution in our actions, because we're feeling incomplete without the result that comes from outside. So this is a specific period in this full moon in Virgo. What we are, in the full moon is a period of time where we also let go, right? So what expectations do we have? What are we waiting to happen that is preventing us from feeling fulfilled? That's the question of this time. And we can trace that journey through our cards for this period of time, because we start in our past energy. We're coming out of the Ten of Wands. Now the Ten of Wands, it is a finality. It is a closing of a chapter, a karmic closure. But as you can see from the card, it doesn't really look like a very comfortable one. This is a person who is carrying a lot of what we could say that these are prescribed notions and standards, and therefore things that we have to measure up to, things that we have to, You know, if we're moving into a new relationship or a new job or any new venture in our lives, you know, this would be, well, it has to be this much money, I want this type of person, I want this type of environment, I want this type of interaction, I want them to see me this way, I want them to, I don't know, like have big tits or a huge cock or whatever it is that like you need. You know, I love to throw a little vulgarity in there so that it keeps us all on our toes. You know, it's that. It's like you're making it so difficult for yourself by having all of these very rigid expectations based upon previous experiences. Again, you can't, it's not, this isn't a blame issue. This isn't about pointing the fingers. This is just how we tend to function as humans, and we have to challenge ourselves to move beyond that, to be able to let go. That is what this purification energy is. That's why we have this loneliness to contend with, and it's so that we can find our path, you know, but finding our path means dropping these things. So that's where we're coming out of, is this, everything that we've been experiencing has been building up to probably accumulating those, and then therefore feeling stuck or overwhelmed or pushed to the brink, you know? And we got the Hanged Man on its side, I might say, as the next card. So it sort of, when it comes out on its side, I usually see this as like the process is about to turn so that we move away from suspension. But this is a voluntary suspension, you know? When we are in the Hanged Man energy, we're choosing to be in contemplation. We're choosing to take stock. We understand that this is a necessary part of our process as a human being. But out of that comes a decision, a commitment, right? A new truth. And how we move out of that truth is up to us, but I am personally seeing, and I can certainly relate to this, that, you know, when we're not in our empowerment, we feel the need to sneak away from our past. We feel the need to, you know, we think that we can quietly bypass certain processes in order to move on, when in fact, if we don't embrace the process, if we don't stand in the fullness of our personal authority, we fall into deviance, and when, let's be honest, what deviance is: deviating from the sacred path, from the path of enlightenment. And let's take a clarifier on that Seven of Wands energy, the Seven of Swords energy, because, you know, the Seven of Swords, actually, I would also say, is also moving away from complications that are unethical, people or things that cannot be trusted, that people or things that are not solid. This can also be the interpretation. This is all in our past. This is in our very recent past, so it's also an influence that remains in our life right now. And our two... Okay, so it's clarified by the Page of Pentacles, which is a very slow-moving energy, but one that is driven by an understanding of what it is that we actually need to reach for in place of this sort of, I want to say dishonest, but it's more disharmonious, not in alignment with our values. That's really what it is. So we've seen what that is. We've seen what manifestation we want to find, to you know, to conjure in our lives in order to move beyond the murkiness and the darkness and the twistedness of what we don't feel in alignment with in our lives. And this comes through the tempering process. And of course, the tempering process is something that we always have at our fingertips. It's weighing the pros and cons. It's working through, you have to work to, if you want to polish it, if you want a diamond, you gotta create the friction that causes the diamond in order for it to be polished. And that's what the temperance process is. The temperance process is acknowledging that light and dark exist, choosing to be on the side of the light regardless, even if it's 50-50, and then embodying that light, not to fight the darkness, but to be the light, right? That is really what temperance is. It's it being an acceptance of what we cannot change and having the courage to change the things that we can, right? In any case, letting go of the Seven of Swords energy, moving beyond that, is important, because it's about not deluding ourselves. It's about not lying to ourselves. It's about not finding ourselves in a lack of alignment with the truth required for us to be on our highest spiritual path forward. And however this would have manifested or does manifest, this is our present sort of pivot energy here. We have two very interesting energies. We have the Tower, of course. What goes up must come down. In this case, this is the shattering of that Seven of Swords energy. This is breaking out of the Hanged Man energy. This is breaking away from the burden of the Ten of Wands energy. In order to get there, it's like you kind of have to have a dynamite moment in your life, and sometimes that's a tangible dynamite moment. In this case, I could say in my timeline, from what I've expressed to you, this would be, shattering the limitations. That this would be standing up for myself and making a choice for myself, even if it doesn't seem like something that anybody else would find to be logical or sane. It's experienced as turmoil, as chaos, as breakdown, but it's divine in nature, so therefore it is fated. It is the destined path. It is protected. It's guided, and that's what's important. And how is it guided? It's guided by the inspiration of the heart. Here you have, if this represents yourself, it could represent somebody else who's come in to help you with this, but some sort of strong emotional drive, a knowingness, an understanding of what is in our cup, or what is in the cup of somebody else, that we can trust ourselves or trust the support that we have to be re-inspired with a faith and a belief in love. And when I say love, of course, you can take that however you want in your life. I mean, that can mean any number of things. It's not romantic love in my case, because there's certainly nobody that I can think of who would fit that bill. But it is the sense of self-love at the very least, and I shouldn't say least in terms of it being diminished value. It's like that's the most important thing, but we start there, right? In my case, I could say that probably is what it is. It's like, well, in order to make a determined choice in our lives, especially one that's very destabilizing, you have to have self-love, otherwise you crumble into nothingness. And here it is. The clarifier is the Ace of Swords. That is the ultimate truth. That is knowing your truth. That is standing in your truth, in the essence of who you are, what you know in your heart. This isn't about intellect. This isn't about that type of knowledge. This is about heart knowledge. It's therefore, because it's divine, it comes from above into us. It's just what intuition is, whatever drives you forward in your life. When you have an Ace of Swords, this is an epiphany. This is one of those moments where you understand that taking any given action whether inner action or outward action. It's a revolution of sorts, an individual revolution perhaps, but I'm sure if we looked at this reading we could apply it to the macro as well. I haven't really been looking at it this way right now because Pisces season tends to be more insular, but of course look at the state of the world, of course these things could apply. So what is that Ace of Swords for you? Think about that. Take the time to really think about that. I have an idea of what it is for me, so, and I need to focus on that. But you know, when you carry your sword of truth, you can not only survive a tower moment, but benefit from a tower moment, profit from it, consciously be strengthened and reinforced and reinvigorated by it. In fact, in all honesty, any tower moment, if it doesn't, you know, completely like deplete you of all of your resources, is a huge opportunity to grow. And we have the beautiful Knight of Cups to accompany that. So we know that it's from the heart. It's in the heart, whatever that revolution of truth, that epiphany is. Moving forward, find ourselves in a time of balance where what we have, what we receive, is equal to what we give, which is of course where we want to be as a human being on this journey, right? I mean, that is when we find ourselves in a divine alignment, is when what you get is what you give. And of course I'm meaning this not in a pedantic way, I'm meaning this, or in a negative way, I'm meaning this as a celebratory you know, throughout life pendulums swing in the subconscious mindless existence that the vast majority of people experience. You know, they're not living consciously, they're not living purposefully a lot of the time. And so subsequently you find yourself out of alignment all the time, and that's the, you know, the drama and the chaos that we experience in life all the time. We experience as passive victims. We're victims of the circumstances of our lives because the pendulum swings and it's like, oh, this happened to me, or this, now it's over here, and like I can't keep up and I'm overwhelmed and I'm blah blah blah. Well, no, because you're just not awake. You're not being mindful of it, how you actually feed that pendulum swinging. The Six of Pentacles is where we are grounded in our sense of self-worth, to the point that as a result of being in the fullness of our self-worth, we can give of ourselves. We give our overflow. We receive reward for being generous. You know, that's what that is on any level. I mean, in this case, I'm talking about it as if it were a material manifestation, but it could be anything that is of worth to us in life. So that's the energy that we're moving into as we move into Aries season, which is a beautiful energy to have when we're moving into an individuation energy, right? And interestingly, it was clarified by the Page of Wands in reverse, which I take as a cautionary card to remind us that what keeps us out of balance, what keeps us out of the Six of Pentacles energy, is when we are not tapped into the Page of Wands energy, which I shall show upright. The Page of Wands is the most playful, youthful, wild, I wouldn't say ambitious because there's no real thought behind it, but it is the child, the spirited child. It is the inner child coming back to life. That is what is required in order for us to be in that balance. We have to find that playfulness. We have to find it in us to be ready to receive new experiences. not to be limited in our life to thinking that we've already experienced all these things and we know how this is going to turn out, we know what this means, and so on and so forth. I'll take a clarifier on that energy with the Six of Pentacles, because I think we could use a little bit of direction there. But that's certainly how intuitively it speaks to me. And we have the Ten of Pentacles. So again, this is a legacy card. So the legacy card is really more the focus on where we want to go, what our end goal is. So in that being the clarifier on the Page of Wands, it implies to me that the goal of our life at this point, in order to build legacy, has to be a playfulness. It has to be the desire to receive whatever comes our way and to use it as a how would I put that? To think of life as the you know, your life is a playpen. You know, the world around you is a playpen, and I know that this has been like a driving force behind the complications of Pisces season this year has been, you know, which drove my choices in life too. And even in making those choices, I'm still struggling very much existentially with that. How am I playful? How can I be playful if I don't, you know, I need people to riff off of. I need circumstances to play within. But when I'm alone, why do I go into seriousness and perpetual contemplation and, you know, like everything's philosophical and everything's, you know, serious and, you know, oh, if I'm not like doing something completely structured and with a purpose, a conscious purpose, then it's escapism and it's not worth it, and it's like, oh, it's a waste of time and whatever else, when that is the very essence of what we're here to be and to do. And if we can't do it with ourselves, we're certainly not going to really benefit from doing it with anybody else, because then that creates a duality, and that means that it's a mask with other people, right? You have to find that within yourself. You have to be able to look at yourself and say to yourself, I don't care that I have, like, you know, 46 years of wrinkles on my face, or, you know, like whatever it may be, like the beginning of jowls or whatever, you know. It's like, I am an inner child processing a human experience, and my soul is eternal. So it doesn't matter if my body's 80 or 20 or 5 or 35. Your essence never changes. And if we can embrace this and actually make it a part of our life, then we don't fall into the bitterness of it all. You know, how many people do you hear, like people that are older, who will say, you know, they're in their, you know, 90-year-old bodies, and they're like going, you know, I still feel like I'm 14. My body isn't allowing me to do that. Well, you know, again, people that are 90 today didn't have the wherewithal to know that, you know, they needed to take better care of themselves. Hopefully we're all learning that now, and, you know, that, you know, you take care of your body because it's the one thing that the one responsibility that you really have, right? So that you can have a long, healthy life where you can do as much as you possibly can at any given age. You know, I mean, you might not run a marathon when you're 90, but you want to be agile, you want to be as flexible as possible, you want to be as independent as possible, and you want to be able to use those 2 legs and those 2 arms to get you to wherever you want to go to continue having a life. Same for your mind, you know? So this all ties in with the Page of Wands energy. I don't know how I went off on that, but that's the energy that was coming through, so we'll just take it as being from Spirit. Because interestingly, again, our outcome card, and I hadn't actually paid attention to this, is Ten of Pentacles. So again, our legacy is built on the Lover's card, which is choosing what we love. So whatever we're doing in our life, if we aren't choosing what we love, then we aren't honoring our human experience. We're not actually following what we're meant to be here to do. And if we don't follow what we love, then we find ourselves in poverty consciousness. This actually came out reversed, so I think that the emphasis is more telling us that our legacy is going to be fulfilled because we're going to choose, what we love. But in the upright, it implies that if we don't do what we love, whatever that means, so take the time to figure it out, that's what the hangman energy is there for, we are going to find ourselves in poverty consciousness, feeling unfulfilled, feeling unloved, feeling like we have nowhere to turn. That is a construct too for us watching this. I mean, I understand that, if you're homeless, that's not going to resonate. And I mean no disrespect in that way if you're talking about physical circumstances, but we are having a metaphysical, spiritual conversation here predominantly. We also got the King of Wands in reverse. So again, as that came out with the Five of Pentacles, I'd say that the emphasis again is that you cannot come into the mastery of your inspiration, which is what the King of Wands is. The King of Wands is somebody who knows that everything that comes his way is a source to be inspired. Every experience, every person, because if he's choosing to do what he loves, of course he's going to experience that. Of course that's going to lead to wealth, to legacy, to fame. And when I say fame, I don't mean being on the cover of a magazine. I mean being celebrated in your world for what you accomplish and for what you bring to the table, right? So that's a big message here. And we got one weird out of the blue card that basically I take as being what crosses us, what we have to step beyond, which makes sense in light of all of the cards that we've just read. We have that fucking Eight of Swords there. Are you gonna let this happen to you? Are you gonna let this take over your life? Feeling that you're not good enough, that you're not enough, that you're too old, that you're too fat, that you're too ugly, that you don't have enough of this, or you haven't had enough experience, or this is fear, self-created prison. This is like, being terrified of the subconscious mind, and then enclosing yourself, imprisoning yourself as a result. These are all just ideas, they're just thoughts, they're just constructs. And we do it to ourselves by attaching ourselves to those things because we're afraid of rejection, of abandonment, and in turn this conjures up feelings of inadequacy and feeling shame and guilt and all of those emotions. Every time you feel any of those, you have to remind yourself, low frequency vibrations, my choice. I have the choice to get rid of these. I have the choice to say, you know what, if I feel shame right now, I say no to that shame. If I feel guilt, I can examine what's causing me to feel that guilt, but at the same time, I can't change what I have done. I can, however, change how I view what I've done and make myself a better person, so that if it really is out of alignment with my principles and my soul journey, that I won't do it again, or I'll do it differently, right? That's the whole point of that. So Eight of Swords is what we have to combat here. And I can certainly understand how, from a Piscean perspective, that would be what we have to focus on letting go of at this full moon in Virgo. Because Virgo is about finding discipline and systems and using knowledge efficiently and purposefully. It's purpose, Virgo. So purpose cannot be fulfilled. It cannot even be acknowledged, recognized, or administered when we are in Eight of Swords energy, right? Let's take one Osho Zen Tarot for the week. Is that what we want? Because it was coming out? Fine, we're doing it. The advice for just to synthesize all of this stuff. Sharing. Let me find that card because I have no idea what it is. I think it's Queen of Wands, is it? Let's see. Wands. Yes, Queen of Wands. Page 50. I will hold that Queen of Wands up for you. Queen of Fire, she is in this deck. The Queen of Fire is so rich, so much a queen, that she can afford to give. It doesn't even occur to her to take inventories or to put something out aside for later. She dispenses her treasures without limits, welcoming all and sundry to partake of the abundance, fertility, and light that surrounds her. When you draw this card, it suggests that you too are in a situation where you have an opportunity to share your love, your joy, and your laughter. And in sharing, you find that you feel even more full. There is no need to go anywhere or to make any special effort. You find that you can enjoy sensuality without possessiveness or attachment. You can give birth to a child or to a new project with an equal sense of creativity and fulfillment. Everything around you seems to be coming together now. Enjoy it, ground yourself in it, and let the abundance in you and around you overflow. So that is our outcome, and of course, all I could think about that whole time was moving out of the Hanged Man energy, and right below that in our reading was that Six of Pentacles energy, and that is exactly what is described here, that dispensing treasures without limits, welcoming all and sundry to partake in the abundance, because you know that it is infinite, because you have that faith in yourself, that self-confidence, that in giving of yourself, you will always receive what you need too. As you move above to the fourth center, that is the heart, your whole life becomes a sharing of love. The third center has created the abundance of love. By reaching to the third center in meditation, you have become so overflowing with love, with compassion, and you want to share. It happens at the fourth center, the heart. So we're ready to share. That's what it is. We're stepping outside of ourselves. That's what that Knight of Cups is. This is when we're ready to share. Sorry, I lost my place there. That's why even in the ordinary world, people think that love comes out of the heart. For them, it is just hearsay. They have heard it. They don't know it because they have never reached to their heart. But the meditator finally reaches to the heart. As he has reached to the center of his being, the third center, suddenly an explosion of love and compassion and joy and blissfulness and benediction has arisen in him with such a force that it hits his heart and opens the heart. The heart is just in the middle of all of your 7 centers. 3 centers below, 3 centers above. You have come exactly to the middle. I don't know what that means for you, but I hope this is beneficial to you on this journey as we navigate the end of Pisces season and full moon in Virgo energies of what we should release and what we should embrace, and be sure to take the time to set those intentions for yourself, and maybe do a little ritual at the full moon to commemorate the journey that you've been on this last year, and what it's taught you and what you're ready to release so that you can move into that sharing energy wholeheartedly, authentically, and in full service to your higher self and to those around you. I love you. Namaste.